first 5 rows. So kindly leave the last 2 rows vacant. So para we can give space for the others joining in a bit late. Malay nyo may ano sa ilalim ng upuan, may paraffol mamaya. May GCash, o ihanda ang QR code. Oo nga ma'am, no? GCash, G-Forest. Okay, thank you so much for your cooperation. Are we live? Okay. So by the way, yeah, we're also streaming this live via Facebook, Circa's Facebook page. So if you have your colleagues or friends who are also interested to join, just share the live stream on Facebook. So there's Circa free Wi-Fi here. So please make the most out of it. Oh, yeah, but not during the lecture. So I'm giving you the freedom for the next 2 minutes to use the free Wi-Fi to share with your colleagues and friends. It's on the Circa Facebook page. We're being streamed live, and also we're also being streamed on Zoom. Although yung Zoom link po natin ay nakasend lang dun sa mga nag-pre-register, but I understand yung iba, they have just signed up around lunchtime. Siguro may nagkayayaan na mag-join din. Okay, I think we're good to start. So again, maraming salamat po for joining us. Good afternoon. I am Sunny from SEARCA, and welcome to another session of our Agriculture and Development Seminar Series, or the ADSS. So as many of you know, the SEARCA ADSS is our regular forum for the exchange of ideas and studies, research results in agriculture and rural development. So we aim to contribute to a dynamic scientific exchange within the Los Baños science community. And this learning event is actually the very first ADSS in SEARCA's 12th five-year development plan for 2025 to 2030 under the overarching theme of Sustain Southeast Asia, or Sustainable Transformation of Agricultural Systems through Innovation in Southeast Asia. So thank you so much for joining us. And we have, I think many of you are students here, no? So I think the average age is around baka may mga outliers po. So, doon na lang tayo sa yung mode na lang. Okay. Around early 20s. Okay? So, we are also joined by some participants via Zoom from people from NFRDI. I think on-site we have people from Picard, LLDA, I think from UPLB as well. So thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Without much further ado, I'd like now to introduce our resource speaker who braved the traffic from Taft to Los Baños and also the endless road construction in Calamba. So our speaker is Dr. Maria Carmen Lagman. She is a seasoned researcher and scientist with over 25 years of experience in multidisciplinary, multi-site, and multi-country research for development initiatives. With a PhD in marine science from UPMSI, she eventually went on to serve at World Fish in Penang, Malaysia as part of the Coastal and Marine Resources Management Program and the Aquaculture Genetics Program. She was later involved in several other CG centers as part of the system-wide Management of Genetic Resources Working Group and committees that work on fisheries. At DLSU, she established the Practical Genetics Laboratory, where she led teams that develop research protocols, products, training programs, and policy advice related to fisheries and aquaculture, as well as more recently tissue culture for senior high, biology learning, and the development of Liberica coffee. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our ADSS speaker, Dr. Menchi Lagman.
Good afternoon, everyone. How many of you are economics majors, as I've met earlier? Oh, wow. Biology majors, engineering, fisheries, ecology, aquaculture. All right. The reason I'm asking is I had a friend of mine. I was a recent Humphrey Fellow to MIT. And one friend of mine from high school, I brought him to my class in the LSU. It was a proteomics and genomics class. So we were learning next generation sequencing and programming. And the first thing that he said was like, I told them already, the skill your generation has to learn now primarily is critical thinking. And critical thinking is very hard to develop in a room full of the same disciplined people because you have a group think that basically sees the same perspective of an object in front of you. You need to be consistently challenged with what you believe, consistently exposed to other people's perspectives. And that is how critical thinking is developed. And I told him, yes, we do need critical thinking in this country, just considering everything that's happening around us. And therefore, today, that's my introduction. I will brave the critical thinking system and the challenge by talking about from margins to mainstream, rethinking coastal poverty in the age of the blue economy. Sir, I actually wrote this, so I can give this to you after. The shift towards ocean-based development reflects a strategic response to the growing need for sustainable resource management. As terrestrial resources face increasing depletion and pressure, the ocean presents a largely underutilized frontier with potential to support inclusive, resilient, and sustainable growth. The renewed interest to develop the blue economy may serve as a catalyst for identifying inclusive economic alternatives that integrate marginalized coastal communities of Southeast Asia into emerging developmental affairs. I said Southeast Asia because I'm in SEARCA. Anyway, for Southeast Asian states with a significant proportion of their population residing within 100 kilometers of the coast, the renewed focus on the ocean economy presents a strategic opportunity. National development efforts can be realigned to leverage geographic advantages by strengthening maritime sectors and anchoring economic growth on the most abundant and natural endowment, ocean resources. That's my introduction, but I will just show you my first slide. Anybody has seen this? This is the PSA graph that shows where we are in terms of our Philippine Ocean Economy account. When we say ocean economy, we're talking about the revenues and the money. We're not talking about the benefits of ecological and all that stuff. That is the difference between maritime economy, marine economy, ocean economy, and the blue economy. The blue economy is more holistic in its perspective. So let's try to just break this down. Ocean economy grew by 9.9%. What's our national growth rate? Economists, you guys? 5, 6. So this is almost double of our national growth rate. But look at how our share of the ocean economy to gross domestic product is. And that's about 3.6, 3.9, and 3.6. Just remember those numbers. Okay, so moving forward, if we look at the share of major industries to total ocean economy, I expected economists, ma'am. That's why I have this graph. So we're talking about AFF, that's the fisheries, aquaculture. Industry, that's things like boating, building, shipping, ports. And then services. This is, what do you call this, tourism. And you might want to add there maritime, the maritime industries, the seamen we actually send off. Okay, so we could see here that everything is going down except industry. Fisheries is going down, and that's half of all of it. So if let's say we're going to have no more fisheries, I don't want to do that, okay? I'm just saying, if fisheries continues to decline, what are we going to do with manpower? If industry is declining, this is, doing this research, I realized the Philippines is number 5 or 6 in boat building. Did you know that? And we can have 7 bays of boat building that can actually put in the big boats that you see around here. They're in Subic, they're in Cebu, and they're owned by Korean companies. So I was going like, wow, I never knew that. We had that much. The other thing I'd want to talk about is the services and maritime industry. We used to have a very big share of this, the senior engineers and captains of our maritime shipping lanes. Now the deployments, apparently this is from Mr. Bustamante when he talked to me one time. our deployments are about the same, but the revenues are much lower because we are sending off deckhands, we're sending off boiler people, and we're sending off what do you call this, waiters in the tourists in the cruises. It's going like, why? Who's going? Vietnamese, Malaysians, and even Bangladeshis and Indians are looking at our jobs. So I was going like, oh, alam mo yung feeling na ganyan. And that's where we are right now. So the numbers are there. But let's talk about what are the options of a 5-year-old kid today? And what are your options when you get out of the university today in terms of the maritime economy? Okay. The other thing I want to talk about here is the share of top industries in ocean-based employment. Fishers yan. Fishers and aquaculture people. And then there's 2.42 million persons employed in ocean-based industries with a share of 5% of the total employment of 2023, higher than the 44.3% since 2024. So you're talking about a declining resources revenue with a rising number of those employed. So what would that mean? Lower wages, lower income for these people. So we are a bit, it's a sad news, but it's good news because we can do something about it. So we, as I wanted to mention before, the ocean economy, the difference with the blue economy is because we are actually considering beyond fish and ships, our ocean provides all these other services. And these services are not just services, they're also sources of potential employment. They're also sources of potential revenue and industries that can be developed before that. So I was going to say, where am I going to go? There is a need for economic alternatives for Southeast Asia with a significant portion of its population residing within 100 kilometers. We now need the national development efforts to be realigned. There is a need for economic alternatives for the disadvantaged coastal communities, though the GDPs in countries like Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines have been constantly rising, and 45 to 75% of the populations live in coasts. And there's 270 million people in the coastal areas that are identified as poor. Small-scale fishers, subsistence aquaculture workers, and members of the informal labor force are part of that coastal community. So look at the GDP of the different countries and the percentage that will come from a maritime and ocean economy. How do we compare? They're all double digits, and they're all growing. We're single digit, low end, and we're not even growing. But we're an archipelagic country. Our roots are in the archipelagic and the water systems. We are not taking advantage of the resources. What's sad here is that apart from Brunei and Singapore, where poverty is negligible in Southeast Asia, coastal communities in Myanmar, the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia have an overrepresentation of the nation's poor living in the coasts. The Philippine Statistics Authority, for example, reports 30 to 34% poverty incidence in coastal areas of our country, and the national average is 15, right? So the same disparity in poverty in this is true for Indonesia, where 17.7 million coastal residents were categorized as poor compared to 8.4 million in non-coastal areas. In Vietnam, poverty rates in the coastal areas are above national averages, particularly among ethnic minorities and small-scale fishers. So communities in these areas are classified as multidimensionally poor. I know you understand this better than me, but that would mean low income, poor health, limited education, and no insurance safety nets or even options. Their livelihoods are seasonal, vulnerable to climate shocks, and poorly integrated into national and regional value chains. This results in low, unstable income and little chance of savings and reinvestment. The poverty is more than having income of less than $3, which is what we usually call it. It's a structural and multi-generational poverty, persistent, systemic, and rooted in deep-scaled socioeconomic and institutional inequalities rather than temporary income loss or individual circumstances. So why is poverty so common in communities despite proximity to oceans and resources? So poverty is concentrated in the coastal areas due to convergence of economic marginalization, environmental vulnerability, and policy neglect. Although coastal zones are rich in natural resources, the benefits of these areas are unevenly distributed. Large-scale industries, commercial interests, traders, and middlemen frequently dominate access and prices, while small-scale fishers and coastal households remain excluded from the decision-making, the support services, and the value chains. As a result, many coastal communities remain trapped in chronic poverty despite living abundant marine wealth. So coastal communities are highly vulnerable because livelihoods provide unstable incomes. Communities are vulnerable to environmental threats, and resources to adapt, relocate, and rebuild are very limited. I have a student from DAP. I've been asked to supervise them. She came to me and she said, I want to make the ayuda for the affected communities come faster because it's not coming fast enough. I go like, okay, what kind of study can we do to make it faster? Then I was trying to redirect her. She's in the planning division of BIFA. I was trying to direct her idea about, because this is the easiest to do, right? Indices, trying to figure out status so that you can figure out work plans, di ba? Sabi ko, meron na bang existing na indices to evaluate communities for investments prior to kasi what we want is adaptive, relocatable, or even resilient and returnable function into their livelihoods. Sabi niya, meron daw fish bowl. You can evaluate coastal communities and see which one are most vulnerable. So I told her, I think we can do something new. And that's to see how fast can they recover, given a shock. Are there sources of credit? Are there supplies for boat building? Are there alternative livelihoods at the same time they're having fisheries? Because trying to make the ayuda come faster, I don't think it's something we can do about that. It's not that I'm being resigned, but given the kind of training we have and access to what we can do, these are the things that I think we need to move forward in terms of the decision-making agenda. So they depend on subsistence fishing, gleaning. They depend on subsistence fishing, gleaning, seaweed farming, yan yung kanina. Nakita niyo naman yung picture. An informal trade as the primary source of livelihood. However, these activities typically provide low and unpredictable incomes, making households highly vulnerable to fluctuations in market prices and the impacts of climate change. Compounding these challenges, nearshore fish stocks are often depleted due to overfishing and environmental degradation, forcing fishers to travel farther and extend their efforts for increasingly smaller catches and straining already precarious livelihoods. So coastal communities, particularly small-scale fishers and ethnic minority groups, are frequently underrepresented in policymaking and development planning. So small-scale fishers may also be unable to obtain legal identity, documentation, board registration, formal cooperative membership. So they have weak governments, overlapping claims, policy conflicts. They're always caught there in the middle. So what can we do? I'm a molecular geneticist, I was telling them. I do genomics, I can code, I can study SNPs, I can understand RNA-seq and gene expression parameters. But I'm also very much involved in trying to make what I do and what we all do relevant to the coastal fishers who we said we will help with all the projects we're running, right? So what are some of the innovations that I think should be put together? And later on, sabi ko, hindi naman walang quiz. When my first PhD student became permanent in Salle, and she's now full-time faculty and she's running her own lab. Our definitions of expertise are overlapping. Guess what? I changed mine. I changed mine to population genomics, bioinformatics, and integrative biology. Meaning, I am in the business of bringing all of us together, whether we're economists, we're population geneticists, we're policy people, and wanting to be relevant in these areas to make a difference. So I'm going to ask you later, so now, what can you do? Okay, that's the quiz. I'm already there. Okay, so innovative opportunities for the blue economy in coastal fishers. I'll start with this. Certifications, which can improve market access. Upgrading can elevate product quality. Focus on quality can increase local processing capacity. And increased local capacity attracts investment and market access. So if you can imagine it as a cycle of how things can happen, and I'm going to show you. The challenge there is, pwede pa naman mag-back. How do we start? And when we start, how do we sustain? I've always said, and I was part of the Leadership Innovation Fellowship of Batch 3, and I was in AIM, and they asked me, what is your aim in life, and why are you doing this? I said, I want to make agri sexy. And then he said, okay, make money. He's going, okay, you want to make agri sexy, you want fisheries sexy, make money. Because if it makes money, it will roll with or without you. It will scale with or without you. And it will take a direction also that you might not want it to go because you're not there. But at the end of the day, what are we here for, right? Are we to control how things develop? We want development. Okay, so let's try that. This is a backyard fisher farm. So he's a fisher, at the same time, he grows bangus. Kasi bangus grows in freshwater, brackish water, and marine environments. And did you know that it's the only thing in the world, I think, check me if I'm wrong, but I checked ChatGPT on this. There's aquaculture species that can do freshwater, marine, and brackish water. And so I have a project right now to look at the metagenomics of the gut microbiome in each of these environments, trying to figure out what is core and what is peripheral, but more importantly, what are some of the microorganisms that are already used in single-cell protein production that we can actually pull out from the bangus gut and then make alternative protein based on indices-stride streams. There are so many published papers on this already. So it's a matter of just picking out all, curling out all those papers, get the list, figure it out from your microbiome and try to pull it out. Simple, no? Pero it's not that easy. But that's the idea I was thinking at that time. So he has a fish bangus farm within the same area that he actually goes out to get fish. And that's pretty interesting, right? Look at the quality of his bangus and look at the, how good it looks. So he has alternatives and he's created other ways of doing stuff aside from just going out to fish and be at the mercy of the environment. And that's technology. That's not common. It makes you work a little bit harder, but you have the resources and pens like that are not that difficult to put together. Ang problema kung alam nyo kung ano, similia, the baby bangus. It's very hard to have a constant supply of that. So you have local government initiatives, we have support. This is Bangus Day and Bangus, Bangus Festival in Pangasinan. And I believe you me, masarap talaga yung bangus na yan. We developed a DIY tissue culture kit for coffee. And one of the groups that we trained and came around was the whole of the DepEd Pangasinan. And guess what? Umulan ng bangus sa lab namin. Ang sarap, matamis. Yung bunuan, no? Fresh. So it's really true. There is a story, but here is where the crux hits the ground. So the guy is already doing bangus aside from fishing in small quantities. But there are other things that you can do in terms of the value chain. Sardines. This one is in Spanish, sardines. Meron siyang corn oil at meron siyang olive oil alternative. Diba? Tapos, yung vacuum sealed na relleno na siya. Tapos, of course, the regular smoking, alam naman natin yan. And this is the high-end one, Fisher Farm. I saw their plant. They have something in a box and they have something in a clamshell. Mas mahal yung box. Paano? Maraming certifications involved yung box, and that is exported. Yung nasa clamshell, pang-local. So there are, diversification of markets. Looking into the value chain, this is Rina Rosales' work in Tawi-Tawi. She was looking at the value chain for swimming crabs. And you can see where the complicated second buyer, middlemen, all come around and takes the cut from the person, and where it goes in terms of the quality, from hotel to wet market to sidewalk vendor, diba? And exporter. By the way, just because it's exported, it doesn't mean it's more expensive. And that it doesn't mean when you say world market prices, they may actually be lower than what you can get from direct selling. So let's not be fooled by labels. Okay, so that's how complicated it is. Here are examples of Philippine certifications that can increase the product price. We have International Standard for Sustainability for Handline Tuna, and Marine Stewardship Council, MSC. That's the Marine Stewardship Council logo on the top. What happens is your product gets that seal, and when it is marketed, it can be sold for a higher price. And therefore, it can be bought for a higher price because some people, particularly in the Western countries, value sustainability, eco-friendly. At the same time, did you know we were banned for a while from exporting fish to EU because of our unsustainable fishing practices? So maraming ganyan. And here's an example in Vietnam for a cockle fishery, MSC din to. And apparently this cockle has a story, and the story was taken on and it became a a marketing strategy, I would imagine. And then it was certified as sustainable, which then upped the price. So there are other certifications around the area. There's something called aquaculture, best aquaculture practices. So BAP. Country naman ang certification nito. Apparently may farms sa Philippines, including Fisher Farm and all, that have actually been certified. So farm-based. Ito, fishery-based. Tapos meron din Friends of the Sea, mga ganyang klaseng certification. They do exist. What's the benefit of that? It actually puts the price up. It makes your product more sustainable. It involves upgrading of the awareness, and for the environment, it's also very good. Okay, let's move on. So the other thing we need to talk about, so I'm just gonna think about here innovations and new ways of doing stuff now. Introduction of digital platforms. The DG Marketplace provides market, traceability systems, and online recommendations. Direct connection to buyers, cutting middleman, and fair prices for the fishers. These are some of the benefits. However, the challenge is, how do we engage? How do we train? And how do we supply? Logistics. So there is going to be the mindset change, there's going to be the manpower change, and there's also going to be a sustainable supply that is required. Because before you put something on the shelf, in let's say SM, for example, they have to make sure that you will not abandon them midway because you have no supply. Same with Shopee online and all that stuff, because you're not going to get a good review when it takes so long for you to get your product, or that you're going to say, sorry, supply down, sort of thing. Okay, so USAID through FishRight has started something called Juan Catch. It's a agro-digital platform mainly with the objective of cutting the middleman maybe and making the supply directly from source to buyer. And I think they're still on their feet trying to figure this out because it was suddenly cut in the middle. But that was very interesting, right? So we are a community that uses the phone a lot. And online gaming is the problem at the moment. But it will not be very far within the mark to say that fishers do have access with this system. Okay, here's another one. The one I'm showing you here is fish cracker. Fish cracker from Indonesia. And apparently this is a publication. So it's empowering Bawean Island coastal communities through fish cracker product branding and marketing. So it brings the people together. You upgrade hygiene, you upgrade processing, you upgrade supply, and you're selling it like a, what do you call this? You're selling it like a cooperative-based product. I told you I also work on coffee, right? I've seen this happen for Cafe Amadeo. And they now have how many stores? And that only started with a group of farmers of coffee who wanted to make sure their coffee land remains their coffee land amidst all the urban sprawl that is going towards Batangas and Cavite, towards Cavite. So they have this association of farmers who have decided that it is not just coffee for the palenque they want to make. They're making coffee with the brand name and with all these quality things. They have 3 shops on the highway in Batangas and in Cavite itself. And you see their products in the malls, right? Cafe Amadea. So they're trying to build that for Liberica as well, because we're trying to push for less land, higher product quality, bigger return for smaller volume, because you niche your market. Alam mo ba, last year, a Benguet farmer actually got on auction 9,000 pesos per kg of his coffee. Amazing, no? So kasi when they go to auctions like this, di ba? Nagkwento na tungkol sa kape. You bring around 120 or 2 sacks of raw green beans to a competition. So that's about 120 kg. Imagine if you sell at 9,000 a kg, 120 kg, magkano yun? Buong taong sweldo mo na yun. And then, anything that's left on your farm, for sure, kukunin nila, although a bit lower price, but that's interesting. So, product quality, story, volume, that's required. Here is Philippines. These are friends of mine. Banica Seafood. They're based in Roja City. The guy used to be a Marine, sa US Marine. And then the other guy was part of second, third, fourth generation of yung malalaki pang may-aling lupa na mga tawag dito, fish pond na hindi pa nagbebenta sa development. So the heart there was like, we want to keep making food. We want to keep the people working on our farms moving up. And so Banica Seafood comes around. I'm not advertising products. I'm just giving you examples. What they were saying was, if we take out the amoy of tuyo when you fry tuyo, or we take out the worry that if you put the tuyo or the dried fish from you're buying in your bag, you have to wrap it with bonggang dyaryo so that your clothes don't get, or you have to put it outside. So that was the objective. And it was basically a processing thing and a packing thing. And they're doing vacuum packing. So they have a physical store now. Before, puro online lang yan. But now it's going to the US. Kasi nga, pwede na magluto ng tuyo kahit nasa apartment ka sa California. Hindi siya mangangamoy. Di ba dati, pag nagluto yung tuyo, baka pakasipain ka ng landlord mo ng kapitbahay. The secret was also saying is we don't make tuyo the tira. You make tuyo from the fresh catch itself. And then, before you make tuyo, watch the eyes. Make sure dalawa. Don't put in the processing a fish with only one eye. Kasi baka sasabog yan along the way. Parang ganun. So, sabi ko, nga pala, no? So, the value of the product is really in the processing. So we supply dried fish to wet markets and dry markets, and that's pretty good, diba? And now they're doing global as well. So, yep. Here's number 3. This is where I am. I'm part of funded Picard projects, aquaculture innovations. How do we push what we do until we cannot push it any further? How can we leave projects we do in such a way that it will scale with or without us and make sure that it is sustainable, even if we're not, at least it has a chance to become sustainable. So we have to diversify our species. After all the aquaculture we've done, we're only done with 5. Tilapia, bangus, shrimp, mud crab, seaweed. That's all the organisms we do in bulk. And that's all that we actually do. Everything else, like, the sea cucumber or sea urchin, they're not sustainable, they're not, wala, hindi don't make a mark. So we're always in that 5. And how long have we been an aquaculture country? Bangus and tilapia are number 1 for sure. But what we eat right now is like already 50-50. I grew up not knowing what tilapia was. I didn't know. Because my mom feels that it tastes like lupa. And my dad was from Ilocos and a maritime environment, so anything fresh was dirty. That was my generation. But now, fish fillet is tilapia. Na, di ba? Parang we have that all the time. Okay, diversify species, diversify products. Alam mo, yung son ko loves to eat the seaweed na ano to? Na Japanese, na malutong. Yung Japanese paper na yun, na nori, na isang pakete sa SNRF 490. But at least it's healthier than chips and whatever. He doesn't buy Pringles or what. Pero sabi ko, my galing, di ba natin pwedeng gawin yan? We are a seaweed country. Can we diversify the products that we're doing with seaweed? And I don't know, I see every kid in the elementary school that is beside my school bringing those seaweed. Hindi ako galit ah. They're seeing it as an alternative to chips and that it's healthy for the kids. But why are we not making that product? Oishi, wake up. Dami mo ng products na ginawa. I remember when bread pan was a hit in the 2009 or 2010, di ba? Oh, and then C2 and Vita C and all that stuff. So parang please make the seaweed paper so I don't pay 490 a big pack almost every month. So magkano yun a week para lang sa seaweed ng mga kids na yan. Anyway, so diversity markets. Ang usual kasi natin is the mass market eh. And we leave the traders to do the high end. And we don't kind of worry about, parang sa kape, strip harvest. We strip harvest, hindi harvest red. We strip harvest everything para mabilis na lang, ganyan. We might want to think about that and also teach our fishers to be able to go in that direction. Biotechnologies-based fermentation products, here is where I'm going. Alternative protein, because the biggest cost of any aquaculture is feeds. 60%, easy. So there are so many possible carbon stocks, and that's what I'm dreaming. I'm going to come up with an elixir, then you put it there, and then and there's going to be a recipe, and then you can make the feeds for the babies. Or that's what I wanted initially, but then I was also trained to think. AIM told me this. Where will you get a bigger impact? B2C or B2B? B2C is me to the retail, the farmer, the fisher. That's how we're trained to think in our university. Our benefits are to the... But have we even thought of the idea that we B2B? Because the businesses have the side streams. If you go to Vitasoy and you're working on their okara, who has the most okara in the world? those that are producing the Vitasoy. If I go to the farmer, it will not get into the scale of actually working with the business. So it kind of getting into these things made my brain, as I was telling you, critical thinking, be exposed to people who are not like you, who have bring in new ideas. And I got like, oh yeah, so from the start of the project, we were knocking in those industries that actually made the side stream to ask the question, kalat po ba talaga ito? Because we might be just assuming it's kalat, tapos hindi naman pala kalat. Diba? And we're spending all our time and our effort to try and build something from something that isn't necessarily, that has already a value chain. So, mga ganyan ba? Let's try to challenge what we think and try to not assume but verify when we actually design what we're trying to make as an intervention. And of course, we need, for all of these are all new. For coastal communities, this is like, ano yan? And to think that the average fisher is about 50. So if we try to put in these innovations, I think we might attract a generation that thinks differently. Okay, land-based aquaculture, here's another thing. I went to, there's in Canlubang, malapit dito, LEC, Primates is the name of the company. They can produce in the area 1/4, less than 1 hectare yung lupa. But the production of the tilapia is equivalent to 6 hectares on land, without the worry of bagyo, without the water expense and the environmental footprint. We have to rethink land-based aquaculture. We have to rethink it. Kasi it's a technology, and if there are nature-based solutions that are included. Kasi ang utak natin lagi hindi dapat ang tilapia ganito, diba? Ganyan, magastos yan, mahal yan. So when I saw it, I was going like, you debunked everything I know about land-based aquaculture. Dapat pang ano lang yan, pang high-end, kasi dapat expensive kasi. Okay, so inertia, the policy environment, and the investment. So I think if we are able to show that, kasi sabi ko ang land-based aquaculture, hindi dapat pampalengke yan eh. Pang Australia dapat yan eh. Even if it's cheaper, they're selling to the palengke. And you don't know that it's land-based aquaculture that you're eating because they can sell at the same price. And they can produce in less land. So I was telling them, make it red, send it to another market. You might actually earn bigger. So if you don't grow into 250, 300 per tilapia, which will take 4 or 5 months, palakihin mo ng 8 months, 10 months, tapos itabi mo sa lapu-lapu, sa palengke. Tabi mo. Diba? Tapos ibagsak mo yung price. Diba yung king bee, kingfish, red tilapia yun. Kingfish and king bee, pero yun ang binibili for the seafood. Diba? And they sell at around, nung time na yun, mga 450 per kg. Ang tilapia, 120, 130. Yung kulay itim. Pero malaki. Maabot ng almost 500 per. So 3 to a kilo to 2 to a kilo. Okay. Sige. Gagawin ko na kayo. Ayan, ocean aquaculture. We have to rethink that also. Because we always say, ocean yan, bangus yan, nakita nyo na bang ginawa sa Bolido? It's dirty. It's not environmental friendly. We have to think about this. I've seen Surabaya in Indonesia. It's like as far as your eye can see. Cages and cages and cages and cages. And then one of the the farms here, vertically integrate na sila kasi they produce feeds. So ngayon they produce bangus already for the market. But there's another company, they've been producing feeds and they had the idea like, if only I had moved my business to Indonesia like 10 years ago, bakit ko kasi hindi ginawa eh? Because now Indonesia's aquaculture industry, fish, shrimp, crab, it's like booming. So is Vietnam. So, saan galing ang chili crab? Siyempre, hindi sa Singapore, ano? Saan kaya galing yung chili crab? Ang dami-dami nilang kinakain nun. Okay. There's novel varieties. There are also new industries, including biotechnology. Ito, dito na naman ako papasok. We have mass-scale ways of trying to figure out novel active compounds. And once we have them, we have AI-based things like AlphaFold, which is the ability to invent 2 million molecules in one go. And now you don't even need to code. It's already canned online. So the impediments of training, the impediments of hardware, the impediments of computing power, they're all gone. And even the impediment of needing a facility that can do large-scale sequencing and all that stuff. Because you can go to PGC, send your sample, and you don't need to build that facility anymore. So you can outsource lab work, you can outsource, di ba? You can outsource lab work, you can actually do all of these easy without the investment. You can do the analysis yourself because you don't need to know how to code. And you don't need a computing facility because all of these are online and you can buy GC Cloud Platform or Amazon Web Service. Diba? Parang how fast can you get at this time of AI and technology? Why aren't we working on that? I went to Malaysia in 2000 to be part of the World Fish Center. Across the island of Penang was something called Bukit Merah. It was like dagat and then damo. Everything was all jungle on the other side of the bridge. They started to think about a bio valley. They started to go like, we have Seagate Omron here already. We have Agilent in that island. Where else can we go? And they were thinking this in 2000. And as ally of my institution, isama mo si Doc, isama mo siya diskusyones. Buo naman ako. Di kwento-kwento. Nakikinig ako, kailangan daw gumawa ng program for industrial biotechnology. Gusto kong sabihin, 86 pa lang, undergrad ako, meron na kaming MBB. So they're just starting at 2000 to develop an aquaculture industrial biotechnology program in the University of Science, Malaysia. Di ba? Alam mo yung ganun? Tapos anong ginagawa ko dito? Oh my gosh. Why am I sitting here? And then my daughter, who's now into pharma and data science in pharma, was in KL the other day for a big industrial whatever pharma. And then she told me, Nana, you know, the calling cards I graduate were all Penang. I go like, really? They're all based in Bukit Merah, across of Penang. I was going like, my gosh. I sat there when that was a jungle. I saw what it looked like when it was a jungle. And naano lang ako, aray ko. Ang sakit sa panga, sakit sa bangs. And that's how fast they've moved forward with this in terms of their biotechnology. We need an enabling environment because we cannot. Definitely we cannot. We have a hard time even just getting permits. We're getting ability to do this, the supplies to do this, all these things. Now we have a PGC, we have the facilities to do this, but sabi ko nga lang, aray ko, napakasakit. The other thing na masakit sa akin is in 2019, they asked me, apparently in Sarawak, in Malaysia, they just searched Liberica Expert Philippines. Lumabas daw yung pangalan ko. Sabi ko, huh? Me? Because I worked with Liberica in 2013, 14, So they invited me to go there and to talk about what I do and what was DIY tissue culture for Liberica, kasi Liberica is very few. 2018 yun, 19, before the pandemic. 2024, I was on sabbatical. Text sa akin, Doc Menchi, you wanna see? Wanna see what? You know, the Liberica farms we now have. I go like, okay. Sabi ko sa anak ko, sama ka. Kasi akit tayong bundok, baka mahulog si nanay, walang magdadampot. Kakahiya dun sa mga kasama. So akit kami. Grabe, you could just see, the farmer will earn, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000 per month. And that's because of kwento. I'm not saying it's just me, no, it's everybody else. They recognize the Liberica value And they brought people together, and they brought the government together, the investment funding, and now the farmer is benefiting from that Liberica initiative. Parang, ouch, ouch. Okay, community income for environmental services. This is new. You in economics, research this, guys. Move forward with this. What does it mean? You have ecosystem restoration creates protection against storms and erosion, right? Insurance products and carbon markets create new funding models. This is a new funding model. And carbon credits will be something of value in the future. Right now pa lang, the incentives to go electric, diba, is kind of high and people are doing that. But carbon credits, apparently, ang pagkaintindi ko dyan, this is my understanding, kill me if it's true. Each industry is given an allocation. Hanggang dito ka lang. Pag sumobra ka dyan, maghanap ka ngayon ng merong allocation na hindi niya ginamit, ibenta niya sa'yo. Or gumawa ka ng project na para ma-increase mo yung pwede mong ibsole dun sa allocation mo para gumanda yung environment carbon footprint. So pwedeng magtanim ka ng mga puno, mag-involve ka ng local communities. So this is like, oh wow, so that is mandatory and it's by law and you have to be able to put yourselves in the market for that. There is also voluntary carbon credits. And by doing that, that means nagbabangko ka na sa future deeds ng kumpanya mo as you try to build this. And I've met Center for Conservation Innovation, yung NAST awardee ng Sukat ng Kalikasan. They are into this, and they have been building this for the longest time in the terrestrial environment. Sabi ko, isipin nyo naman ang coastal. Sabi nyo, sige Doc Mench, pero kailangan namin aralin yun eh. So apparently there's manpower for this is very much in need as well. And that's where you economistas can come in. So the nice thing about this is communities retain control. Projects will reflect local realities, and they're replicating models of models for mutual climate and social impact at the same time. So pwede pala tong maging source ng funds for local communities as defined by them. So I went to ChatGPT to see examples. How do we create these complicated carbon market trading flows? You can take a picture. I tried to understand this a bit, and that's why I told you what I know today. How do we build this in our own system? What we need is, as I mentioned to you earlier, an policy environment. Saan yung challenge? Back. Back, sir. Back. Challenge, engage, train, and a sustainable supply of demand for this. Okay, so, yan ang sagot niya. There are existing programs, and there is Philippines at the bottom. National Blue Carbon Action Plan. The Roadback for Mangrove and Seagrass Carbon Projects, pilots and developing local government people, orgs, NGOs, and planning and policy change. But here, in the other countries, meron na silang sites and identification. So they are really in the business of building these things right now. And given how the environment really values the issue of flooding, of climate change effects, Ayala Foundation, they're very much into this, Ayala Corporation. The big companies, Shell, they're also been with this before pa. So talagang meron na pala nito noon pa. Ngayon lang natin na-discover kasi hinahanap natin for coastal communities eh. Naghahanap tayo ng options for coastal communities. Okay, challenge, manpower. It's really manpower. That's why I'm putting that there. What are the options of a 5-year-old kid when he or she grows up? What are your options in 5 years' time when you enter the job market? These are things that you might want to think about, and I'm presenting to you now a very empty space and a very unknown frontier, I would say, for our country, not really unknown. We're there in so many ways, but it's largely unappreciated. And with your brains, your training, your contacts, your skills, it doesn't matter if you're an engineer, you're a communications person, you're an economist, you're a biologist. Everybody has a stake and a possibility of getting into these innovations. I saw myself in 3, in 1 bullet point in 2 of these. Where do you see yourselves? Can you see yourself in any of those bullet points that I showed you among the 4 items that I actually listed? Value chain upgrading, introduction to digital platforms, innovation adaptation of aquaculture technologies, community income for ecosystem services. We have these areas for growth. We have to push this in the discussion of the Blue Economy Bill, which has passed through the Senate under Kiko Benitez and Loren Legarda. And President Marcos is actually in favor of it as well. We have this blue economy feeling. I tell you, when I found myself here is because I was looking at molecular markers that will tell me where the fish go across South China Sea. I got involved in the discussion on maritime security and maritime resources because of what I do on the molecular markers of this thing. And now I'm starting to realize we're putting life and limb of people out there because this is ours, atin to, kailangan natin to, it's part of our economic development. What are we doing in the economic development side? How are we making ROI for the finger that was cut? Paano natin nababalikan yan sa atin, sa sarili natin? So, yun lang, naisip ko. And that can be something I will challenge you to talk about right now. I'm going to end right here, sir. I'm dead. Sorry, I took a little bit more time. 5 minutes. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Ma'am Menchi. So you can stay over there po for the open forum. So I think just by looking at the faces of our audience, I think they've been reflecting a lot from your presentation, especially that you started with some glaring statistics on how we're lagging behind in terms of ocean economy's GDP contribution. Okay, so I think we can, that's a good springboard for our discussion. I think teacher na teacher si Ma'am Menchi, gustong-gusto niya ng may discussions daw. So we're opening the floor for questions, and for someone who asks a question, mamimigay daw kami nitong kakaibang ball pen. It's a magic pen from SEARCA. So
Magic siya, hindi siya susulat.
So yun. So madedictate mo kung anong kulay ang gusto mong isusulat. Yeah. So we have here, of course, siyempre, igigit na natin ito. So anyone who would like to shoot the first question? We also have participants joining in via Zoom, I think, and also via Facebook. I think there are also 30 of them. Mas madami pa sila kaysa sa atin dito. So they also have their questions, but I'd like to give the first opportunity to ask questions from the audience. Anyone? Huwag na po kayo mahiya. Yes? Sige po. Sir, may question po kayo. Ma'am, sige po. Kindly introduce yourself and your institution para naman ma-note po namin. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Okay. Thank you for your beautiful presentation. It's a perspective which I appreciate because I'm in the field of environmental science. Doon lang ako sa kabila. The 4 ideas were thought-provoking. The first one, value chain upgrading, is something na probably we have to fast track. Yung introduction to digital platforms, I was a little bit confused because couldn't this be something that the middleman might be adopting so that they're still in the mainstream? Innovation and adoption of aquaculture technologies you have presented upgrades. And this track is, you are right in telling us that it is not an easy feat. Anyone who would be joining you on board must be sufficiently challenged and must take in the must take in the vibe of, really, and the passion to help bring us there at that level. Community income for ecosystem services is probably the answer to the question of where I am going to be, at least for
Where
the
do you
time.
find yourself doing something?
There. Grassroots. Yun. Pero kasi, there is disparity in the what do you call this? In the work required for value chain, for intro, for innovation and community. How in the light of blue economy do you want this to happen? And have you presented the four in order of need, in order of urgency, as required? Ganun. So that's all. My name is Hildy.
Para naman, kabatch ko yun. Kasama ko sa MSI. Actually, when you gave me this, it came in with the same request from India to actually give a talk on coastal communities. And so you were first, so this is the first time I'm presenting this, and that is a very good comment. My main objective when I first wrote this and thought about this was, please let's talk about the coastal community. Kasi what's happening when you see all the blue economy discussion, they're talking about out there. They're talking about mineral deposits, they're talking about wind and energy, they're talking about maritime, diba? And the coastal fisher community is hardly in the discussion, and so is fisheries, because fisheries is basically subsumed under agriculture. So if you're not under marine or fisheries, you're not in part of the blue economy. You're not part of the blue economy because your blue economy is blue and that's green. Diba? Parang ganon. So yeah, when I wrote and thought about this in those 4 points, the main objective was, let's please talk about the coastal fisher. Let's bring them into the discussion on all these blue economy efforts. If you look at the blue economy bill, which I've read 3-4 times already, pollution, yan yung mga issues. Pollution, land use, plastics. You can't see anything very much on fisheries. You can't see anything much more on coastal fisheries. But yeah, so short answer to your question, I haven't thought through how to prioritize this. How do you make the effort through it? I wanted to start a discussion for people to create the critical mass, to start pushing on for discussions like this. Go to where you are right now, talk about this, bring it up into the discussion of the blue economy. Every time somebody talks about mining or tourism, diba? Or something like that, talk about that, the same thing.
All right, thank you very much, Doc Menchi. Any other question? Yes, sir.
Isa pang batchmate. Yes. Yeah,
Gusto ko rin ng ballpen. Tapos, hindi tayo batchmates
Hindi, matanda ako sa'yo, alam ko.
ng mga
I'm
2
older than
days. Hindi. Nakakatuwa yung discussions. And I think this relates to what Hildy was asking. Pero na-pick up ko kanina, you mentioned enabling environments. And I want to go back to your earlier slides where you presented na we used to have some of the largest shipyards and now they have moved elsewhere.
No, they're here.
It's still here, but Hanjin has closed, right? It's in Subic. So in many cases, ang daming nagmamigrate sa Penang and other offices. What do you think are the reasons for this? Kasi we Filipinos have the capacity, we have the manpower, we have the infrastructure, we have the need for this, and yet we let it go. So ano yung lacking na ba't nangyari yun kaya? And do you think that should be the priority we should be looking at first para ma-invite natin ulit and retain these industries? Thanks.
Thank you for that question, sir. I actually asked that same question to Mr. Burtamante. And guess what he said? Cost of doing business is very high. The cost of doing business, the availability of low-cost raw materials. That's another thing. The third is timely supply. And the fourth would, I think, be manpower development. So what happens is these units, these places become learning grounds. They become training grounds. And then they're taken on by Japan, by Korea, by China, Australia, Norway, Sweden, because they have been trained in our training grounds. So what we are academies for this manpower. Why? Upward mobility. Because if you have industries that are not growing, you will not have upward mobility for your manpower. Secondly, pay discrepancies. Diba? So it's really cost of doing business. But when we start talking about cost of doing business, tabon na naman lahat ng issues natin. Diba? And I go like, we always forget that we're a maritime and we have more water than anybody else. But then the cost of, the Meralco bill, this all become charging stations. Ganun ang nagiging kwento lagi. So are there not enough marine concerned people? Are there not enough coastal concerned people that we cannot bring our issues to where it really matters? So ang idea ko nga kunin niyo lahat ng barangay captain. Munisipyo na nasa sound, tapos gawa ka ng, gawa ka ng isang conference. All munisipyo people will join a conference. Yung hindi, bawal sumali Ito, mag-usap-usap tayo. So makita mo bigla gaano kadami sila. Diba? Makita mo bigla gaano kadami sila. Magugulat pati siguro kung sino man nakaupo sa taas. Ganyan pala kadami yung munisipyo na nasa coasts.
Okay, I think all about building a critical mass that can put pressure to, people up there. Okay, thank you, sir, for the question. I'd like to read a question, one question from Zoom. I think somehow related to what you just said. Aquaculture, commercial fishing, and municipal fishing are three common fishery operations in the Philippines. How can municipal fishery operations fully part of the blue economy when LGU policies, both the economic and environmental, on MPAs, marine protected areas, are not always consistent with the needs and interests of the rural fisher folks who remain deprived, depressed, and underprivileged? Ang bigat ng tanong.
I think what he's referring to is the new recent SC ruling, no? That commercial fishers can now enter into municipal waters, and that many people are actually contesting it. And in some areas where it really matters, they say that it's contest, so on a contest, bawal pa. But in some places that it doesn't matter or they have a difference in policy people, may contest pala, o pwede na. Alam mo yung ganun, meron na ngang tapos pati how can municipal fishers do this? So when I listed these things, I was thinking of small things people can do initially. But this will need investment. And it will need a change in mindset. Transformation talaga. Kasi if we always, I've seen many places. Fisher kasi is already 50 years old. Average. Mahirap na yan gumalaw. Kung gumigising ka ng certain day, ganang routine mo in a day, it's going to be hard. So it will then require an infusion of one investment that matters. Kasi ang nangyayari, project to project May pera, tatakbo. Pag wala ng pera, tapos na. Diba? Pag may pera, aandar. Pag wala ng pera, tapos na. Co-investment. Hindi pwedeng tumakbo ng ang pera galing lang sa isang source. Dapat co-investment. Tapos kailangan hanapin kung sino talaga yung participate, 'di ba? Kung sino talaga yung participate. Kung sino talaga ang participate. May English mo yun. But the difficulty kasi is when what do you call this? When we start to create a mindset of let's just do something for the sake of projects, more than let's really make people make the most of this. Sometimes government is the worst enemy of development. Am I being heretical? No, kasi there is so much money that's going on. And we should value this as investments, not as dole-outs or grants. So I don't like the term grant. We use it as an investment. So kung pwede sana laging may co. And then move with the movers. And do pilot sites. And as the guy from AIM said, make money. When you make money and people see it, it's better than marketing and demonstration of something that actually makes a difference is something that can cascade faster than any other effort that you actually make for training, after training, wala namang nangyari after.
Okay, thank you, Doc Menchi. Why don't we hear from one of the students?
Baka
Yes, sir.
gigilitin na yung leg ko. Nakaslide.
Yes.
Good afternoon po. Siguro pagtuloy na lang din po sa usapan na nandun na po tayo sa point na yes, oo nga po, we actually have the resource kasi napapaliguran tayo ng tubig and labor-wise, I mean, isa tayo sa mga pinaka-populated countries.
Pati market.
Yes po. So, parang, ang napapansin ko kasing trend ngayon is medyo may parang bad, hindi maganda negative na pagtingin sa aquaculture and agriculture as a whole. Kasi if we could remember before, di ba, kunyari, pag napapanood mo sa palabas, parang naging problem is sinasabi ng mga magulang na, huwag ka na mag-aral, tumulong ka na lang sa amin magsaka, tumulong ka na lang sa amin mangisda. Well, we've come past that. And ngayon, ang napapansin ko na line is that parang, mag-aral kayo mabuti kasi kami ayaw na naming ma-experience nyo to na ayaw na namin kayo magsaka, ayaw na namin kayo mangisda kasi walang pera dito, ganun. So, siguro, paano po siguro natin ma-shift yung mindset ng mga Pilipino na yun nga, may negative connotation on agriculture or aquaculture na yun nga na hindi, kasi yun nga, yun yung main na problema na iniisip na magugutom sila pag pumasok sila sa industry na to. Kaya nagkakaroon ng migration towards other mas mapera na industry. So, ayun po yung question ko. Thank you po.
Mas madali kasi humawak daw ng ballpen kaysa ng araro. Hindi ng tatay ko. Dinala niya ako sa Ilocos, pinakita niya sa amin yung mga pinsan ko dun sa nakikisaka and all that. Sabi niya, pag ikaw di nag-aral, dalawa option mo. Dito ka o magbenta ka ng plastic sa palengke. Di niya alam, bumalik na ako dito. Answer to your question. What we need, kasi even those that are actually fishers already, and yung mga nasa Taal Lake, for example, they've made their houses and their businesses and they've raised their kids on farming of fish. They want out. Some of them. Diba? So it's the bottom line, food production, productivity and food production. So how do we change this? DepEd. Hello, DepEd. We have to infuse, kaya kami gumawa ng BTC Lab Kit. So that the kids will know that tissue culture exists. And tissue culture is something that actually is fun, it's interesting, and it's exciting. Plus, in the modules that we made, merong sheet doon, how to do research, what's IMRAD, how to do Google searches, how to write this and that. And at the back, there is the business model canvas. How to create a business out of a tissue culture. Introduce it early. I remember my husband has been involved in GTZ's developing entrepreneurs. Apparently, this is a kwento, when East Germany joined West Germany, they're the poor cousin. And the best way to develop the new Germany was to develop entrepreneurs out of the East Germans. And not get them college educations. That wasn't the solution. The solution was let's build micro-enterprises, build the entrepreneurial capability, make money. Diba? Pero triple bottom line tayo all the time. Money, people, and environment. Diba? So I was going like, yeah, how many of us in the academe, hello guys, actually think of being entrepreneurs? Pag 60 na ako, pag nag-retire na ako may oras, maghanap ako ng business na gagawin pa. Ganun. But at a very early age, you should try to develop that in local communities. Some of them yung sa tourism, di ba? Yung nagbebenta ng trinkets. We see that. We're building that. Siguro, but there should be creative ways of building entrepreneurs. And it's not an entrepreneurship degree. Of course, it helps. Yung ganun. So, yeah, let's go back to the idea. If you want something to be actually attractive, make it pay. Make it meet basic needs. Make it meet dreams, hopes, aspirations. If it's able to do that, then it will then take off. That's what the idea is all the time. And so if students, younger generation, start to use their phones differently, start to use aside from gambling, di ba? Kasi we use our if you can use your phone to create a sale, di ba? And then you earn money, hindi drugs ha. Make a sale of something that's very interesting and important. That will be amazing.
Thank you. So I think that's an early investment with our young learners. So, may meron ba taga-DepEd dito, or maybe someone from Zoom? Okay, we have one more question from, someone from, yes, sir.
Para naman may solution ako, hindi ko solution lahat.
Hello, my name is Tristan from the Associate in Arts and Entrepreneurship at the College of Economics and Management. And I have a question which is also related to the previous question. How can behavior change in the coastal communities be encouraged so the local fisher folks can adopt the new aquaculture technologies? People usually prefer to stick with what is status quo.
That's right, definitely. So what we need is to find people who are willing to take the risk and encourage them. What maybe will be something that you have to find will be a technology that resonates with the locals. Not something you thought of, you think that's very important. I have a story about that, you ask me about it later. I've made my own mistakes in my research journey. And looking back, I realized it's because I was dictating what I thought was important. And when you're at the end and you have the product and you're going there, and then you go like, why don't you want what I made? I almost died making it, that sort of thing. And that's when you realize it's because we haven't co-created this, received feedback, validated what they wanted. And in answer to your question, we have a menu. Get them to order. Explain, and then think of what you think they need or what they need, then discuss. So when we came up with this, yung sinasabi ko sa inyo yung elixir for, hopefully the dream is to come up with a inoculum that can actually transform side streams into alternative proteins, etc., etc. First thing I was thinking of, okay, we're gonna come up with alternative feeds. Then I go like, I'm Salle. UPV yun, hindi ako yun. Di ba? UPV's collective advantage is to make the feeds and test it and go. So I should have a competitive advantage that's different. And I can work with people who are doing this because that's their expertise. Yan. Pangalawa, this is what I want. So person to fisher, etc. So then I realized Region 3 actually is building a feed mill. So there is a program now for some of the regional offices to develop feed mills. And that would then mean the entry point will be the RD. So it should be the BFAR director who's actually in charge or building the project to create the feed mill. Diba? So go down and look at the ground, talk to people. Don't set everything in stone. Walk around, get feedback. And that's why doing things like this, I'm always excited because I see other people, aside from me, inside the room. And that, I think, will make things better in terms of their success rates, as you were saying.
All right, thank you very much, Doc Menchi. Meron pa bang hahabol? Okay, the final question from, kindly introduce yourself and your college.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Francine Gahoy po. I'm from College of Economics and Management, and my major is Development Economics. And I would like, gusto ko lang po i-point out yung mention nyo kanina in terms of maximizing our marine resources. Since you mentioned na we don't have the monetary and human resources for that. And yung question ko is, yung main debate kasi, not main debate, but a debate in development economics is that, do you want the government to handle it or do you want private firms to take over or do you want foreign investments? So my question, yung apat po na nandyan ngayon, what do you think is the most efficient and the most beneficial for our marine people or to alleviate yung poverty po? Thank you.
I've been around circles of people in industry as well. In the recent 50 years ASEAN discussion in Australia, I just happened to be going down the elevator and I saw one of the big stalwarts of the industry riding there and he had a blue pin, yung Philippine pin. So ang una ko, yun, huwag kayo mahiya. Siyempre nakakaya. Pero, okay, mahiya. So, hi sir, I realized that you're here. I'm doing this. Tapos, maybe sabi niya, will you be free for lunch? I just want to tell you something. So, syempre, kikilig ka naman. Ano yon? One, there's always an hesitancy of industry to work with government. Or maybe to some extent, write them off. And that's very sad, right? Because both have the resources. So we have to make that better. We have to make that discussion better. So don't ask me as if they're separate units. It's just that they're not. There is always the hesitancy. Do you feel that? Have you heard that? It's like, it's not gonna work. Di ba? Pag sinabi naman ng isa, kukunin lang natin pera yan, ng aagaw lang yan. Ita-take advantage lang tayo yan. Oh, why do we have to pay? Meron namang pera yung mga yan. Ito naman isa. Pag doon naman kasi tayo mag-i-invest, hindi siya efficient. Makukorap lang yan. So maraming ganunang usapan. Let's find a topic and people who can work together. Who have that, and there are, I'm pretty sure there will be. 3D printing has shown that very clearly. Diba? All of those sort of things. There will be people that can work together. You just recognize that not everybody can. So it's a topic-based thing, and you have to talk to people. Whether government should invest, yes, definitely, because not many people have the resources. But I will backtrack and say some people do have the resources. If you look at some households in coastal communities and you count how much they earn collectively, you'll be surprised at the number that they get. It's not as, economists, you will know that. It's not as bleak and stark as you think it is. There are, potential areas there. Tapos, credit lines. Credit lines, the ability to, kasi kung unbanked ka, wala kang social services, wala kang credit services, wala kang benefit ng ecosystem eh. Insurance policies. There are insurance policies that agri and fisheries can actually attain, and it's something that people just don't value. But now insurance is coming up. I know some of you already are starting that at a very young age, which kami nila Hildy, never yan sa utak namin kasi wala kami expendable income to even think of that. Di ba? Parang ganun. So whether industry, whether government, whether local communities should be doing this, I think you can bring people together enough to create something different as long as you see the will. So it's a matter of picking and choosing who your partners will be and what the question is and where you're going to work. And that would mean a lot of networking, a lot of understanding the problem on the ground. It will mean a lot of work rather than just running a project.
Okay, so I think that ends our open forum. It has been a very rich discussion. Palakpakan natin si Doc Menchi. And thank you very much for all your questions. And we hope we continue the conversations even beyond the seminar. If you want to reach out to Doc Menchi, you can talk to her after this, or maybe just search
Find me in
search her
LinkedIn.
name.
I'm there.
LinkedIn. Okay, LinkedIn or ResearchGate if you're interested to learn more about
And
her
Lasan, you'll find me there also. Find me
publication.
there.
Yeah.
It's surprising when you search your name that the amount of information on you, no?
Yes, scary. Okay, so would also like to hear some feedback from you. Kindly share your learnings as well from the webinar. We have a feedback form. Kindly scan through the QR code. For those attending online, we have the evaluation form as well. Yeah, so feel free to share your thoughts as well. Any lingering questions that you have for Doc Menchi?
Any contentious,
Any contentious
that will always be welcome.
na yes.
I hope you can also take that attitude, you know. Feedback is feedback, whether good or bad.
Yeah, feedback is a gift.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Seek it if you want to move ahead.
Right.
Avoid it if you just want to stay where you are.
Okay, so we will also be sharing the presentation later on. So if you pre-registered, we can send it via email. It will be available as well on via SEARCA's Facebook. Website.
And when this gets written and published, I'll give it to you.
Yes.
I just started it, so I started reading the parts
Yeah.
about
So I think that's I think the students can also get some ideas for their thesis topics. Ayan, nag-iisip na sila kung nasa junior year kayo or nasa second year pa lang. So lots of potentials and opportunities for further research in that area. Okay, so we'll now proceed to the formal giving of the Certificate of Appreciation for Doc Menchi. And for this part, I'd like to invite the head of SEARCA's Training for Development Unit, Dr. Nova Ramos, to give the token and the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Maria Carmen Ablan Lagman for sharing her expertise as a speaker during the SEARCA Agriculture and Development Seminar Series titled From Margins to Mainstream, Rethinking Coastal Poverty in the Age of the Blue Economy, held on the 20th of August here at SEARCA, Los Baños, Laguna, Philippines, signed by our Center Director, Dr. Mercedita A. Sombilia. Also like to have a group photo. So maybe konti lang naman tayo. May we request the rest to please join us here with our speaker for a quick group photo. So, yes. Thank you so much for joining kahit magfa-5 na. Don't worry, we have some refreshments later. And also would like to thank our participants who joined via Facebook and Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us. Pwede po kayo magstay doon sa likod. Pwede din dito sa likod. Pwede pa po dito sa likod para compress tayo dito. Ayan, okay. Thank you so much po. Bigyan natin ng ballpen yung pinakaunang dumating kanina. Sino ba yun? Thank you po. Some refreshments that you can bring with you. Thank you so much for joining See you again in our next ADSS in September.